outcome of the operation, of course, is not a reason for usage of a nuclear weapon. We have a security concept that very clearly states that only when there is a threat for existence of the state in our country, we can use, and we will actually use, nuclear weapons to eliminate the threat for the existence of our country.
All right, let's look at this further now with David Marples, who joins us from Alberta in Canada. He's a professor of Russian and East European history at the University of Alberta in Canada. Welcome to the programme. What do you make of Dmitry Peskov's comments there that Russia would resort to nuclear weapons only in the case of a threat to the existence of his country and not as the result of the current conflict with Ukraine?
Well, I guess at some point the two could coincide if you consider that if other forces entered this battle, then it may be considered to be a threat to the existence of Russia. And that's unlikely to happen, I think. But the way nuclear weapons are being bandied around as a possible way out of an impasse is quite disturbing. And we have to consider that, even one nuclear weapon used by Russia against any NATO country would result in the likely destruction of a major Russian city in response, and most likely Moscow. I mean, this is not really a place where the Russians want to be. So I think the impasse will continue. I mean, it'll be a very, very long, drawn-out war if it continues in this fashion. And the danger is that what is going to be left of Ukraine when this war is over, because the destruction is not from the Russian ground forces, it's all from missiles that are hitting civilian targets and causing humanitarian problems. Ukraine is being depopulated day by day as this war continues, and only the army and the government remains to fight on the ground. And this is why it's such a tragic situation. And I don't think it's one that Russia is really trying very hard to end right now.
No, and that is an important point. You say it's being depopulated day by day, and we're seeing that so clearly. Just for clarity, what is meant by the threat to the existence of Russia?
Well, I mean, maybe your guess on that is as good as mine, but it's got to be some threat where there's no real way out for Russia. For example, if its military forces in Ukraine are completely defeated, let's say, and if Ukraine perhaps even advances or attacks Russian territory, that may be considered to be a direct threat to Russia. I don't think it's likely to come to that because I've not really seen any examples of Russia being threatened either by NATO or by Ukraine. There's been no threat. There have been no missiles fired on Russian territory in this war. So really, I think it's unlikely to come to this. But it's hard to say exactly what the Russians mean by they say a threat to the existence of the Russian state, because it can be interpreted in very different ways. And that's particularly the case in this war, where Russia has used a lot of very nebulous phrases like denazifying Ukraine, which could actually mean anything. No one really knows what it means. And it's simply an excuse to go to war and reduce Ukraine's status as a nation in Europe and try and shackle it completely, so that it's reduced to signing agreements on losses of territories, and losses of territories in most cases to Russia.
David, before I leave you, if I could open another strand with you, what do you expect from peace talks here in Istanbul on Tuesday?
Well, it's a matter, I think, of what Ukraine is prepared to concede, if anything. And your reporter earlier gave a good example of why it's very difficult for President Zelensky to make concessions, even on Crimea, which has in fact been part of Russia now for 8 years, let alone the Donbass, where a war has been going on, but there's not really been any major progress on either side. I think the Crimean case is perhaps something that Ukraine might concede, given that it's very difficult to get it back. And if it did get it back, there would be pressure on it constantly from the Russian side. Economically, Crimea is no great asset to Ukraine. The Donbass region, on the other hand, has been a major industrial region of Ukraine for more than a century, and I think Ukraine would be really concerned about losing it. Having said that, the Donbass is also going to be in need of tremendous economic reinforcement in the years ahead. It's going to need heavy investment, modernization of its industries, and perhaps a whole revamping of its economy in future years. So even that is something of a handicap to the Ukrainian state. And much depends really, I think, on how far the European Union and other states are prepared to come to the assistance of Ukraine when this war is over, and ensure that it can recover its economy and exist as an independent state without fear of future attacks. And that's going to be very difficult to ensure as long as Vladimir Putin remains president of Russia.
David Marples, fantastic to speak to you. I've learned a lot. Hope to speak to you again soon. Thank you so much for your time and your analysis.